Good morning. I'd like to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity by Yoganandaji. This is, I Demand to Return Home. Impediments beware, flee my path, I am homeward bound. Through the long corridors of time, stumbling often into pits of error, then lifted out by thy unseen hand, I have walked painfully. Discouraging darkness, barbed wire fences of habit, stony embankments of indolence, mountains of indifference, oceans of unfaithfulness, sirens of sense-longing may stand even now in my path, as if to prevent my onward march to thy palace. But 1,000,000 kingdoms and sextillions of years of unblemished worldly happiness will never tempt me again to turn away from thee. And this reading is from Rays of the One Light, which are parallel commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And this is entitled Deeds versus Intentions. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ emphasized repeatedly the spirit, not the letter, of the law. In chapter 5 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, he speaks of the sin of killing and of the legal punishment attendant on that sin, but says that more important than the act is the desire to kill or to do harm. He shows that the sin of harmful desire goes beyond merely wanting to kill. My message to you, he said, is this: whoever is angry with his brother without cause already stands condemned. Whoever contemptuously calls his brother a fool shall answer for it to the Supreme Council. And whoever calls his brother an outcast of God shall be in danger of hellfire. The word brother here means any other human being. For all of us, in the highest sense, are brothers and sisters, children of our one Father, Mother, God. The true self of one is the self of all. To hurt another is, even if one doesn't realize it, to hurt oneself. Swami Kriyananda in The Path recalls an episode in which the master, Paramahansa Yogananda, revealed his sense of identity even with the plants. One day, Kriyananda wrote, we were moving a delicate but rather heavy tropical plant into position on the hillside. Our handling evidently was too rough, for Master cried out, "Be careful what you are doing. Can't you feel? It's alive." To wish death to anyone, to wish even harm to another creature, is to deny in oneself the reality of that divine life, of which all of us are manifestations. It is, in short, to deny the eternal truth proclaimed by the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. This self is never born, nor does it perish. Once existing, it cannot ever cease to be. It is birthless, eternal, changeless, ever itself. It is not slain when the body is slain. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. Good morning again. I'm missing Dharmini because I'm expecting to take turns with her, and I find myself playing all the parts today. So she has this cold and fever that seems to be sweeping Chennai. I hope it is never reaches you, or if it has, that it has already gone. But you have a little cough there, so we should all back up. The question of deeds versus intentions is really an eternal one on the spiritual path, in the sense that we can always take it deeper and deeper and deeper according to our own level of understanding and experience. in the beginning, when you come onto the spiritual path, we are often driven by a desire to understand more the meaning of perhaps the spiritual practices that we've engaged in, or the rituals that have been a part of our lives, but what is the real purpose of them? What am I supposed to feel? What does this accomplish? Again, what is the meaning and significance for me? What if we do these things mindlessly? Are they still good? Of course they're still good. There is some blessing that comes, but obviously it's much better the more we can invest into them. And that usually comes with either intellectual understanding or the heart's devotion. And so I had a friend who was who was from a Muslim family, and they had all kinds of rituals that they performed regularly. And she, when she came to college, started to feel a little bit separate from them because she just didn't understand them. And she felt strange doing them. So her parents would call her regularly and say, this was, I think it was her grandmother's death anniversary, "Did you light the lamp in remembrance for your grandmother?" And she just started to avoid the question. I think there was some period of days that it had to be lit for. And she started to avoid the question, and they could feel her resistance. And so she was more and more frustrated by this, and she came to me. And I was in college too. She didn't come to me. We just happened to talk about it. And she said, "It bothers me that I would light this lamp and not know the reason for it, not know the purpose of it, and I don't feel anything about it." And she said, "And what bothers me about that is that somebody else will also be lighting this lamp, and it will be very sacred to them. And I am doing it without a sense of that sacredness, and I feel like I'm insulting their devotion by doing it without that sense of the sacred." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I mean, what a beautiful thought. Don't you realize the struggle that you're having with your family is that they think you're not lighting it because you don't care. But actually, you care so much that you don't want to do it undevotionally. You have even more respect for it than somebody who would just do it even thoughtlessly. You have to tell." Her father was coming into town that evening. I said, "You have to tell him. This is the reason." She said, "Oh, no, they won't understand." And I said, "Believe me, they will understand." And so anyway, she went to dinner with her father and mustered up her courage and told him. And he was completely thrilled. And he actually wept and said, "The questions you're asking about our religion are questions I didn't ask myself until I was 50 years old. And you're asking them now." And it was a great healing between them. And that is usually what drives us deeper on the spiritual path, as we say, this is all very nice what I'm doing, but what does it mean? And what does it matter if I just go through the motions but don't necessarily feel anything? There's a saying, someone, I think it was Garrison Keillor, who was a famous American humorist, he said, "Sitting in church no more makes you a Christian than sitting in a garage makes you into a car." You know, we have to feel these things. We have to take them inside. We have to understand the purpose of the law, not just the letter of the law. So we start to get onto the spiritual path, and we realize that the heart's devotion matters, that Krishna says even a leaf tendered with devotion is significant to me, and we realize that though we can do all of these outer rituals, and they're beautiful, that it's better to do something that we really feel. And if we can put that feeling into the same puja and arati, then fine. And if we can't, then let's find something that we can put it into. And so this is when we start to go deeper. And then we come to, for example, yoga. So then we have all the rules and duties of yoga, which include the yamas, the niyamas, and so on. And I meditate 90 minutes a day, and all the sort of things that are there. And practicing the techniques even. This is how you do the techniques. Practice them this way. But even then, after a time, we have to start to go deeper. Because with the yamas and niyamas, for example, ahimsa, nonviolence, okay, don't kill anyone on the way to work, fine. it's a lot more subtle, as Jesus was saying, than just nonviolence in act. I hope that's not a problem for anybody at this point. But nonviolence in speech is also there. That's a big one. As Jesus said, whoever calls his brother a fool, whoever tells his brother, all these different things, insults. And why? Because you can say, well, but my brother called me a fool first. So what about him? He should also be in danger of hellfire too. You see, it doesn't add up, because we're saying, well, yeah, why am I always the one who gets in trouble? And what about all these other people? As that one woman asked Swamiji about why life is so unfair. The good people suffer so much, and the bad people are having such a good time, she said. It just doesn't seem fair. Now, why do we suffer? Where does this hellfire come from? After a while, we become so calm in meditation, or after a while means even a week of meditating, that we actually feel some calmness, and that's different. I feel calm. What's this feeling? This is new to me. And then, when we feel agitated again, we notice that we are not calm, because now there's something to compare it to. Before, at least speaking for myself, I was agitated all the time. So agitated about this, agitated about that, agitated about my brother calling me a fool, agitated when I called him a fool. It's all agitated. And so basically, more agitated, less agitated. There's no difference, nothing to compare it to. But when we get calm through meditation, then we say, no, wait a minute. I wasn't agitated before, and now I am agitated, and now I have this comparison, and I don't like this agitation. And so we find that even our words, if we do wrong to someone, if we call them a fool, even if they're completely, totally a fool, still, when we say it out loud, there's a little bit of a pinch in the heart. A friend of ours, we were visiting him in a corporate setting. He was working there, Haridasji and I. And he said, it's very intense and we're under a lot of pressure, and so we shout, and it's fine. It's just fine, this man said. Because I know that I can give it, and people just have to take it. And then maybe tomorrow they will give it and I will take it, and it's all fine. We've all agreed, there's no hard feelings, we just go on, it doesn't hurt, no problem. And his declaration sort of dared us to say anything in reply. But I was thinking, gosh, okay, so you can yell and they can yell and it's all okay. I know this isn't right, but it sounds compelling. And so in one of those wonderful situations when I had Haridasji sitting next to me and someone throws out something like this, you can just go. And so he said, I agree with you, and it is very easy to live that way, but whenever there's anger, it leaves a residue in the heart. And the guy said, that's true. And it was just so beautiful, because it's a perfect way to put it. It leaves a residue, a residual. It's sort of like when acid flows through the heart and then it's gone. Still, the heart is a little bit burned by that, especially if it's our own acid. You see? Swamiji said, why get riled up in the pot of seething emotions? You yourself are the one being cooked. And so it's really quite amazing when we think about it that way, that we can be so angry at this person while they're sleeping peacefully, blissfully unaware. So who are we even having the conversation with? Ourselves. And so, I don't mean to be fake and to say a yogi is never angry. I am a yogi, therefore I am never angry. It starts to come out in weird ways. Better to be sincere and truthful. Okay, I feel angry, but also better not to call it that it's okay. It's fine to be angry after all. Look, I mean, anybody would be angry, and I'm not as angry as somebody else, but I'm less angry than they got angry at me. We don't want to justify either. This brings us to the next niyama of non-lying. We don't want to lie to ourselves. That's the most important. Not lying to others, sure. And that's important too, but not lying to ourselves. And what that manifests on as the spiritual path is pretending we're following the rules when we're not. when we're following the spirit of the rules but not the law. I didn't lie out loud. But still, what's the intention? And why does this matter? Because, again, I was saying, why are we in danger of hellfire? Where does that hellfire come? Not externally, internally. Because we feel that pinch, we feel that discomfort, we feel that residue in the heart. Because we can feel anything. You know, sometimes you come onto the spiritual path and have made a practice of not feeling at all. Because it's convenient and it's safer. We came out into life open-hearted, one person, stab right in the heart. Okay, I will now close my heart. Now I don't have to feel anymore. I have some nice armor here. So I will not have to feel pain anymore. The only problem is I don't feel joy either. I feel nothing. And we can go for a long time with our hearts closed. And sometimes, if we're in an emergency situation, if we're in a battle, if we're struggling in a war, we can't just feel everything in the moment because we would lose our willpower, we would lose our resolve. So we can march, but we can't do it forever. Thinking about a war, though, I have to laugh about this story Swamiji told of during I think it was World War II, and there was the U.S. was fighting some other country in Africa, and the native people there were just walking through the battlefield, active battlefield, while shots were being fired, bringing, their fruit things and so on, because they had a place to go, and this was in the way. And people said, "What are you doing? You'll get shot." And they said, "It's not our war." And although I don't know how many of them made it or not, still there's a deep teaching in that too. Because how many battles do we get involved in when really it's not our war? That this, Atai is fighting with this mama, and we have to have and we have to say, like that, and you might have said this, and then we talk to or we sit at home and think about it. But really, it's not our war. How do you know? Because no matter what you do, it doesn't help anyway. Still, if this one is going to be mad, this one is mad. I remember we had a situation like that. A brother and sister would fight, and I was calling them Devaki Kamsa. Because it was just like that, and there was just no need for it. Why does that even happen? We feel that family is such a treasured, safe, beautiful thing, or so it's supposed to be. And the principle of family is that way. There is such a thing. Our hearts naturally seek kindred souls, kindred spirits. That's needed on the spiritual path. In life, and it often comes on the spiritual path. Why don't we always find it in our birth families? Master said sometimes enemies are born into the same family, so they can work it out at close quarters. And I don't think he means so that they all end up dead at the end. But rather that, look, you've been so mad at each other, just work it out. Find a way to either make peace or to just drop it. Or you step out and say, this is no longer my war. I don't mean necessarily step out literally, but at least step out emotionally. Saying, look, you do the way you want, I'll do the way I want, and as long as you don't touch my property or whatever it is, that if the fight is over something physical, we can have peace. But it's interesting then if you find that dynamic between some relatives or even with yourself, that just say, listen, who knows what the past was, but let's just try to go forward in peace, and if not peace externally, I will try to have peace internally. And that requires great strength. It's not a namby-pamby, okay, fine, whatever you say. It takes real fire and real grit to say, I have this peace and I want to maintain it. And so, the other niyama is, as I was saying, if it's a fight over property, the other yama, is non-covetousness, which means not desiring that which belongs to others. The only reason why we would desire something belonging to others is we would be concerned that we might not have it ourselves. We might not get it ourselves. And there's enough for everybody. And what is yours will surely come to you, as Sister Gyanamata said. It cannot be taken and it will surely come. And sometimes what other people have wouldn't be good for us. And sometimes what we have wouldn't be good for them. We have to trust in Divine Mother dispensing everything out correctly and in the right time and in the right place. It doesn't mean we can't be inspired or motivated by other people's even good qualities. This comes onto the spiritual path where we no longer desire physical things necessarily with the same intensity, but we can be desirous of other people's qualities. Look at their discipline. Gosh, they just are able to meditate 17 hours a day, and I just can't do that, and they must be a real yogi, and so on. And why? Why desire those things? Don't worry, just keep taking this same step forward, your own steps forward, what you need to do, what's in front of you. As Swamiji said something like, we don't need to seek tests on the spiritual path. We don't have to put ourselves in trying circumstances because God sends them anyway. I mean, they're coming, they have come, they're automatic. So don't worry about, I'm going to really test myself. He's testing you. And maybe the test is to relax. Sometimes we feel if I could just get stronger, if I could just get sterner, and let me see, how can I look more intense than this? It's like, that's not the direction that's needed. One person who was very mental, very analytical, very sharp, and needed perhaps, Swamiji in fact told her she needed to balance that by opening the heart. She said to him once, Swamiji, I think I need to further refine and increase my powers of analysis. And she said it was the only time in a conversation with him where he actually rose from the chair and said, "No!" That's taking the pendulum, which has swung this far, and trying to achieve balance by swinging it farther. And so we have to watch for that in ourselves. If what we're trying isn't working, we might need to scale back and look if something else will work, maybe the opposite. They say one of the marks of insanity is to keep repeating the same action expecting a different result. And so it's sort of like this, I've tried this, it doesn't work, let's try again. Okay, it didn't work, let's try again. I beat myself up to make myself change. You're such an idiot. Did it work? No, because I keep on doing it. All right, well, you're such an idiot for continuing to do it. Okay, well, that didn't work either. Well, you're such an idiot for not thinking of anything to say except you're such an idiot. And it just keeps on going. It doesn't work. As Swamiji said, there's no reason to call yourself a sinner. If nothing else, it gives you an excuse to keep on sinning. I'm a sinner anyway. So, might as well go to it. And there's no need for that. We're children of God. We're children of the light, as the reading was last week. So remember that when we enter into this world and we get that heart poked and then we discover, we're not supposed to feel. That's the solution then. That we can do that for a time, but then we can't go like that forever. This is why when we start meditating, we feel the heart starting to open. We sometimes feel pains come up. And we think, no, wait a minute, I was meditating to feel peace, and instead I'm feeling pain. And maybe I'm doing it wrong. But it isn't that. It's that the heart had something in it that is there anyway. But when we meditate, we relax the heart, and then some of these griefs, these hurts come up for release. That's all it is. They're just coming up for release. And the thing is, they're not helping us. As you know, energies flow in the spine through the chakras. And if one of those chakras or gates is shut, the energy doesn't flow very well. And so we find that it affects us in many ways. And when we finally release this, then we feel a lot better. I had a friend, who took Kriya initiation. Now, if you're wanting Kriya initiation or if you're preparing for Kriya initiation, this was an unusual story. So still seek it. But he had a lot of difficulty, actually, after taking Kriya. He was practicing it, and suddenly this memory came back to him of when he was 11 years old, and his his eldest brother died or his father died. Maybe his eldest brother, I'm not sure. In any case, he suddenly became the responsible male of the family at 11 years old. And he also had a lot of difficulty with other relatives and things I don't want to go into. But he had completely forgotten that this had even happened. It wasn't that this was something unresolved. It had been so shut down, he hadn't really thought of it since the time that it happened. And so it was almost like having amnesia and then being cured of it and remembering, oh my God, this happened to me and I didn't even know until just now that this did happen and it did bother me. And it actually took him about a year of looking at that experience and talking to others and getting even some help and counseling for how to work with these feelings, because they were from such a young place, 11 years old. And in some ways, a part of him hadn't really grown up. It was still 11 and still in this hurt. And then he finally was able to, also through Kriya, feel at peace with it. And then what he noticed was his health was dramatically improved. Suddenly he had much more strength, physical strength, than he had had before. He would love to go to the gym and he would do some, 10 chin-ups or something like that. Suddenly he could do 50. Really just from one day to the next, just about. And he found he could run, he could do all kinds of things that his vascular, cardiovascular system was much stronger, just like that. Not because of blue-green algae or spirulina or anything like that, but just because he was walking around so shut down that it became normal. And so that he got used to it, and as soon as he opened up, all the energy could flow in the spine again, and it even manifested physically in terms of his health. This happened to me too. I was living in a situation that was difficult for me, and so I found a way to adapt. I found a way to adjust. As long as I don't bring up these certain topics, it's fine. And when they bring up those topics, I just say, and I don't just say what I really think, and I've kind of given up on having a certain amount of happiness in this situation, because that's how you survive. Meanwhile, I was growing in other ways. It wasn't that I was standing still. But a friend of mine came and visited me who had known me earlier and said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, like if you walked in and I said, "What's the matter with you?" Like, what do you, I don't know, is there something wrong? You seem sad. And I said, no, I didn't sleep well yesterday, so when I do that, people always tell me I look sad. You're just tired. She said, no, that's not it. So, And so I had to go away and kind of think about it, like, am I sad? Is there something wrong? And I had to conclude, after meditating on it, that there was. That I had shut my heart down, and a part of it, and that it was bothering me. And that, though I had lived with it for at least for years, actually, that now it was, I guess, being prodded, saying it's time to open up. So I did open my heart, and ooh, ouch! I started to feel all those reasons why I had closed it in the first place. And they were still present. And so, but I had to live with that, because I realized, well, this is no longer working for me, so I have to go through it rather than around it or back away from it. And in time, actually, I began to work on how I could solve the situation, because it had to be solved. And I got together with a few friends, and we were all sort of thinking and planning and saying, okay, how can we generate a positive vortex of energy? Swamiji says that when you're trying to shift the energy of a situation, gather with like-minded souls and create a positive vortex of energy. It always shifts that way. Whereas if you go to all the negative vortexes and try to, appease them, you just end up getting sucked into it, or nothing happens. Find like-minded people and mix with them. That helps you not only become stronger, but to create something strong. And as he also points out, negativity has little or no cohesive power. The negativity seems so strong and so threatening and so unified. We all agree that you're a fool. But as soon as you leave, then they say, okay, the fool is gone. Who's the new fool? You're the new fool. No, I'm not the new fool. It's just when you're in the habit of finding fools, you find them everywhere. And so that happened to me when I was in a difficult situation. I felt like all these people were like a pack of wolves after me. This is a different situation. And then I suddenly had this sort of thought in meditation, but if you just took me, the lamb, if you took me out of it, which is to say the dinner, out of it, then they would just turn on each other. If we're still hungry, who's next? And so then that made me feel much more at peace about it, because I realized it wasn't personal. They were just saying, look, we're wolves, we're hungry. we bark, we gnash our teeth and we chew. If you're here, we'll chew on you. If you're not here, we won't chew on you. We'll chew on someone else. It really has nothing to do with you. Just a question of whether or not you're edible. And so there wasn't really much to do in that situation. And these were actually friends of mine, I'm sorry to say. So it wasn't just sort of abstract, like, oh yes, well, you are all just wolves to me. They were people I cared about, but I realized I had to care about them from a distance. And so going back to this other situation, these friends of mine and I got together, we were generating a positive vortex of energy that was going to shift the environment, and it was going to shift, and we were going to have a shift, and then what happened was we all shifted out. Not by our own will, but one by one, the Divine Mother just went, got us out. And that was fine, because that environment was needing to be what it was. And we were not resonating with it because we were out of tune with it. So we ended up going on to our next chapter. But that's another example of, it's a good example too of when you're in a difficult situation, you want to do everything you can to be at peace with it and to make it improve, either outwardly or improve your reaction to it, so that when it's time to go, you can leave with a sense of victory. Either because you were able to shift the situation and you could leave as friends with everyone, or because you feel at peace and don't feel the need to leave, and then you go. And you could stay, and you really could stay. I could stay or go, Divine Mother, it's up to you. I could go or I could stay. No, it's just, we really feel I could stay. I could do this for another year. That's another victory. Or another victory is that the whole thing is a complete disaster. But you have tried every possible avenue that you could. And then peace comes. I did everything I could, and still it went the way it was going to do, went the way it was going to go. And so let me be at peace, that I can't think of even one more thing I could have tried. And then we just have to be in Divine Mother's flow that way, that this is what she wants. You can always win in that way internally. And if it isn't already clear, deeds versus intentions. Intentions are what we hold internally, what's really in the heart. As has been said, God watches the heart. So if your heart is in the right place, that's what matters. And if your heart isn't in the right place, then it matters much less what you do outwardly. Though still, it's better to fake it. Even Shakespeare says, pretend a virtue though you have it not. Act virtuous. And even if you don't feel that way, and it ends up working on you anyway. And so, but that can be helpful when we're growing in a certain situation, when we're, like for example, being angry but not wanting to show it, so I'm supposed to feel calmness. Fine, please continue. Better that than saying necessarily what you actually are thinking at the time. But still, then we work on even feeling fine. Again, the simplest way to accomplish all of these things is just meditation. Because when you meditate, the heart relaxes, the energy rises, we feel that sense of security, and then all these things happen, and we don't actually have that strong of a reaction. And so we're not actually having, today ahimsa, and ashdeya, and aparigraha, and what are the others? Oh man, there's 7 more. And how am I going to be able to do all this today? And instead, you find yourself naturally manifesting that as you meditate. You find yourself acting peaceful because you feel peaceful. And you feel peaceful because you feel peaceful. Not because of something. This person has been quiet, and that person has been quiet, so I can feel peaceful. No, you just feel peaceful even if they're not quiet. You feel it. Why? Because you have practiced peace. That's one way you can think of meditation. I'm practicing peace now, so that then when in my rehearsal, so that when I go into the situation, I'm already warmed up. I'm already been practicing the peace. You feel that joy. You feel that openness. And it gives you strength that is lasting. Now, how can it really be, though, that God watches the heart? I mean, we understand that in a certain way, but what's the mechanism behind that? Remember that the amount of karma generated by an action depends also on our attachment to that action. Our intention, we really meant to do that. Our emotional investment in the action. So if you accidentally bang your hand into somebody and say, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware, you know, are you okay? There's a little bit of karma that comes from hitting the person, as opposed to, line it up, take aim, pow! I really meant it, and I threw my weight into it even. There's much more karma accrued to that. That the intention, you could say, is almost everything. And so that's where we have to really watch the intentions. They're much more binding to us, especially as we become more sensitive, because you can say, listen, this doesn't apply to me. I didn't hit anybody on the way to satsang. And I don't plan to hit anybody, well, no, I don't plan to hit anybody afterwards. But again, words, fine, but then also thoughts. Those thoughts, they just start boiling. And so again, you can try to take them on, but if you just meditate, you find it's like lowering the heat on the stove. It takes just the burner goes down. And whatever is boiling starts to just become a mild simmer, and it even just becomes settled. Why? Just because we feel that connectedness with God. We feel that security. So remember most of all that, as it says actually in the Bible, to he who loves much, much is forgiven. And if we just try to love much, much is forgiven. What can we be even forgiven of? Truthfully, our karma. Our karma is something that is an actual debt that has to be paid. And debts can be forgiven. Divine Mother can just go, let's take this page of unpaid bills and just throw it away. Consider them, forgiven. And so these karmas can be forgiven. You can overcome karma more quickly by just loving. Loving people, yes, as much as you can. But more than that, loving God. Loving people as expressions of God. Feeling God's love flowing through you to them. And then seeking love from God. Maybe He'll give it to you through some particular person. Maybe He will give it to you through someone else. But in any case, seek His love, and you will find Him very quickly. Just by opening your heart, inviting Him in, you will find Him there all the time. God bless you.